Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of Office Hours with Lanora. Office Hours with Lanora was created by me to help you if you're interested in learning about those options related to a career in real estate. Number two, for those that have probably already started a pre-licensing course, my goal is to help you pass that class on a first attempt. And then finally, for those of us that have journeyed into the real estate industry, earned our license, and my goal is to help you stay in the industry. So that's the reason why I started Office Hours and this series, to make sure that I was able to cover the gamut to help you in whatever needs you have related to the real estate industry. On this episode of Office Hours with Lanora, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, I went over about 11 areas that you should expect questions from on the national portion of the Illinois broker licensing exam. On this episode, I want to discuss the 3 areas of the state portion of the broker licensing exam and the 3 areas of the leasing agent portion of the leasing agent exam itself. So there's only 3 areas and 50 questions for leasing. For the broker state specific, there are 40 questions and 3 areas that you should expect those questions to come from. So let's get started. Okay, so specifically speaking, in relation to the broker state portion of the licensing exam, the first area you can expect questions from will be licensing requirements. And there are 10 questions coming from this area. So 10 questions out of 40. You can expect questions centered around the exemptions related to a license. You can expect questions about the different types of licenses in the state of Illinois, and there are 3. There's the broker, there's the managing broker, and then there's the residential leasing agent. Those are the only 3 real estate specific licenses in the state of Illinois. They're going to ask you questions about personal assistance. What is reciprocity? So Illinois is a reciprocal state with about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it's still 8, with 8 other states like Wisconsin, Georgia, Florida, Colorado, Indiana, Connecticut, Iowa, and Nebraska. We share reciprocity with those states. You will need to know a little more about those states that have that reciprocal agreement with Illinois, meaning you've earned an active license and have an active license in Illinois. What other state can you go to? And you are exempt from taking another pre-licensing course, and you're exempt from taking you're exempt from taking the national portion, the national portion of the licensing exam in that other state. All you'll have to do is take the state portion of that other state. And I'll give you a better example. I'm licensed in Illinois. If I decide that I want to earn a real estate license in Indiana, all I will need to do is provide the state proctor on the Indiana side with my proof that I am actively licensed in Illinois as a broker. I believe Indiana has the salesperson's license, which is equivalent. I provide them with the proof that I have an active broker license here in Illinois. All I need to do on Indiana side is take their state exam. I don't need to take the national portion of the exam. I don't need to take a pre-licensing course in a state such as Indiana that Illinois has a reciprocal license or agreement with, okay? We're also under that first portion of licensing requirements. We're going to discuss the real estate recovery fund. You would have learned about all of that in your pre-licensing course, so make sure you're taking really good notes. Section number 2 of the state-specific broker licensing exam will cover and have questions related to laws and rules regulating real estate practice in Illinois. And you should expect 20 questions. So half of the questions for the state portion of the broker exam will come from this area, laws and rules relating to real estate practice. Some of those questions would be, what is the purpose of a license law? What are some of the advertising other than disclosure things that you can and can't do? What is the relationship between a broker and the broker relationship? What commissions? Are there such things as a finder's fee or a referral fee? What about rental finding services? So let's say someone lives in an apartment and they actively live in that apartment, but they also help the building owner out or the property owner out by showing the property to other prospective tenants. How do they get compensated if they're not licensed, or should they be licensed? So that's something you should know. It's going to talk about the different types of ownership issues, whether that's a land trust or a homestead. It's going to talk about the handling of monies, the special accounts, and the security deposits. You'll know specifically for Illinois that what type of accounts, should it be in an interest-bearing account or a non-interest-bearing account, with the security deposits and how soon must they be returned, so on and so forth. We'll talk about the plat of survey, the plat act, the legal description, transfer stamps, dying with or without a will in Illinois, the Illinois Human Rights Act, and the interference with contracts or listings. We're going to talk about all of that in section 2 on the state portion of the Illinois Brokers Licensing Exam. The final section number 3 for the Illinois Broker Licensing Exam, the state portion, there are 10 remaining questions and they all center around disclosures. You need to know about agency, designated agencies, like do you represent the seller? Do you represent the buyer? Can I be a dual agent and represent both sides of the same transaction? We're going to talk about advertising and then property disclosures. So there are certain disclosures that need to go along that you must include inside of your real estate transaction. So one of those disclosures is going to be the Residential Real Property Disclosure Act. That disclosure will ask you about fuel storage tanks, if there is mold on the property. And this is that one form that the seller only is filling out. So for my licensees, you know, we pass that paper over to the seller and they are the only people that should write on that form and check yes or no that they have disclosure of the condition of their home. You should never fill that out for the seller because you don't know anything about that property. You can get in big trouble for that. Finally, they're going to talk about under property disclosures, AIDS and HIV, stigmatized properties, and material defects. So we'll talk about the material defects, the latent defects, so on and so forth. So those are the 3 areas for the Illinois state-specific broker examination. First area is licensing requirements with 10 questions. Second area is laws and rules regulating real estate practice with 20 questions. And then the third area would be disclosures with 10 questions. So we've talked about the state portion for the brokers. Need some water. Let's talk about the leasing agent exam for the state of Illinois, national, so on and so forth. So let's talk about the leasing agent exam in those 3 areas that you need to know for the residential leasing agent licensing exam. The first area is going to relate to definitions and laws governing contracts and leases. So we're looking at the definitions or general definitions related to what is real versus personal property, what the lease and rental agreements are. We're going to talk about the terms related to leasing and contracts. We'll talk about contract laws in this first section. We're going to talk about the essential elements of a contract, what the statutes of frauds mean, handling of money and certain documents, record keeping requirements, background checks, application, credit reports, those sorts of things, and the common provisions. All of that will be covered under the first section for the residential leasing agent exam for Illinois. Section number 2 for the residential leasing agent exam will focus and center on laws governing fair housing, leasing, and owner-tenant relationships. So you can expect questions from this section to center around the Civil Rights Acts. You notice I put an S on that because there's more than one Civil Rights Act. We're going to talk about the federal, state, and local fair housing acts with an additional S. We're going to talk about discrimination laws, anti-drug laws, government-assisted housing programs, aka some Section 8 questions related, the American with Disabilities Act, ADA. Think of questions about, you may have learned in your course, if you have someone who's disabled and they have to make modifications to a rental property, who will be responsible for converting that property back after those changes have been made and that tenant moves out? So those are questions you're going to need to know. It's going to talk about the owner-tenant relationships pertaining to occupancy standards and regulations. For example, if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, how many people can be in that apartment? You can't have a 2-bedroom apartment and have 17 people actively living in a 2-bedroom apartment. You're over occupancy. We'll talk about the risk management, liabilities, and insurance that must be maintained on the properties, the renewals and terminations of lease agreements, and tenant obligations and remedies, owner obligations and remedies. All of that is covered in section number 2 for the residential leasing agent exam. The final section of the residential leasing agent exam is pretty much unit 14 in your book. In that Modern Real Estate Act, what's the name of the book? Modern Real Estate Practice in Illinois book. I'm sorry. See that 10 times. So it's pertaining to Unit 14. You should know that backwards and forwards. Or you can go on to IDFPR's website and look up the Real Estate License Act of 2000. It's the act. It's going to talk about what the purpose, the authority, and the administration of the act is related to leasing activities. This is that one time that you'll be able to pick out a section of the Real Estate License Act of 2000 and just focus on that section, because we're looking at the residential leasing agent license and that licensing exam. You should only be required to study that portion of the License Act. It's going to also ask you about the licensing, education, and examination requirements. You do have to be a minimum of 18 years of age, have a high school diploma or a GED, and be of good moral character. You must complete a 15-hour pre-licensing course related to leasing. And your exam fee will be $37 per attempt. And your transcript will be valid for 2 years from the date that you completed or began your, the date you began your course, completed your course, sorry. It's going to talk about the issuance, renewal, and termination of a license and procedures. We all know that we are in a leasing renewal cycle right now. I'll tell you now, the answer to the renewal question is July 31st of even number years. It's never odd, it's always even. So by July 31st of even number years, you must renew your residential leasing agent license. If it's your first renewal, there is no CE requirement. You simply go right on over to IDFPR's website and pay the $100 renewal fee. If it's your second renewal or more, you do have to complete an 8-hour leasing continuing education course. And then once that course is completed, you pay the $100 renewal fee. So I just covered at the beginning of this live the 3 sections related to the broker state portion of the licensing exam. And then I just covered the 3 sections related to the residential leasing agent exam. So you have both parts, finishing off what we started 2 weeks ago with the state portion for the brokers, and then starting and finishing up the 3 parts for the residential leasing agent license. I hope that this is most helpful for you all. Of course, if you want a copy of this outline, simply call or email me or get a hold of me some kind of way. The contact information will be up above, and then I will send this to you. Definitely answer any questions that you may have. Up top also, you'll find upcoming dates for pre-licensing courses that we'll be offering on Monday and Tuesday of next week, July 25th and 26th. We'll have in person at our downtown location, residential leasing agent, the residential leasing agent class. And then on August 1st, we're going to start our morning Zoom classes for the broker pre-licensing course. August 8th will be in-person broker pre-licensing classes downtown. And what's coming up after that? Oh, July 30th. If you or anyone you know, whether they attended the Realtors Real Estate School or not, are interested in taking a review class via Zoom to prepare for the broker licensing exam, we're going to have that too on July 30th. So I hope to see you in something, or give me a call and let me get some questions answered for you. But I look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of Office Hours with Lanora. You all continue to be safe. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.